Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1601B, and today's date is June 26th, 2018, and the title of the episode is The Plan is in Motion as the Truth Begins to Emerge. Let's get into the economic collapse, political, and geopolitical news. Now, we understand that the deep state is in trouble, and they tried to push all these different type of tricks to basically get Trump or Trump's son or anyone else in his administration. And there's been attacks all over the place. And we know that with the meeting with Trump Jr., we knew that this was a fake meeting. It was done under false pretenses. Trump Jr. thought it was about something completely different. And actually, Rob Goldstone, who was the intermediary who set this whole thing up, he was testifying in front of Congress, and he says, yeah, this was a bait and switch. He didn't realize that this is what they really wanted. He thought this was going to be dirt on Hillary Clinton and everything else, and it was really something about the Magnitsky Act. So we see right now that all of this was being staged. Certain players were involved. But let's review this whole thing, and let's try to get a handle on all of this. So, Russian businessman Denis Katsiev was a key figure in an embezzlement and money laundering scheme involving New York real estate uncovered by Russian lawyer and accountant Sergei Magnitsky. Magnitsky reportedly died in Moscow's prison after a year of inhumane treatment. Katsiev settled with the U.S. Justice Department in 2017, paying around $5.9 million in 2017 to settle the case, less than 3% of the amount originally sought by the federal prosecutors. Fusion GPS was paid $523,000 by Katsiev to investigate London baker Bill Browder, who pushed for the Magnitsky Act, while Katsiev's attorney, Natalia, was in the United States actively lobbying to remove the sanctions imposed by the Magnitsky Act. Fusion GPS associate Rob Goldstone set up the infamous meeting at Trump Tower between Trump Jr., Katsiev's lawyer Natalia, and various associates. The meeting was shut down by Trump Jr. after it became clear what Natalia wanted to discuss, and it was the Magnitsky Act, because Trump Jr. thought there was going to be dirt on Clinton. Hours before the Trump Tower meeting, Fusion GPS founder Glenn Simpson met with Natalia. Meanwhile, Fusion GPS was paid $1 million by DNC law firm Perkins Cole, which acted as an intermediary for Hillary Clinton and the DNC to create the 34-page dossier. Fusion paid former British spy Christopher Steele $168,000 to assemble the Trump-Russia Steele dossier, which included the cooperation of two senior Kremlin officials. Clinton campaign manager John Podesta met with Fusion CEO Glenn Simpson the day after the 34-page dossier was made public. For their efforts, Fusion GPA was paid $1.5 million between Hillary Clinton, the DNC, and the holding company owned by pro-Kremlin businessman Denis Katsiev. Also recall that Fusion GPS hired Nellie Orr, the CIA-linked wife of demoted Department of Justice Bruce Orr, to help with the investigation against Trump, and that Bruce Orr was demoted after meeting with Simpson and Christopher Steele, the former MI6 spy who assembled the dossier for Fusion. Fusion is currently being sued right now for libel in two separate cases by three Russian businessmen bankers in U.S. District Court for their inclusion in the dossier, along with Secret Server, story pushed by Glenn Simpson, and we see others are part of this lawsuit. So this whole thing is completely falling apart right now, and everyone is connecting the dots. And you can see how the money flowed to all these different areas. We see right now that Trump is slamming the media for using the Obama-era migrant pictures to criticize him. So what the corporate media is doing is they're taking the pictures back in 2014 when Obama was bringing up all these illegals. And remember, he put this forth with his memorandum. The beast train would bring all these people up here. The kids were ages mainly from teenager on up, bring them into the country, push them into all different parts of the country, into sanctuary cities, and then they would bring their parents up here. And back then, the corporate media didn't report on pretty much any of this, and the kids stayed separated from their parents, or they kept them in these cells. And what's been happening is the corporate media, as they're talking about Trump, they've been showing the pictures back from 2014, because back then they allowed a reporter to go in, take a look at the site, take a look at what was going on, and they took pictures. But it was never really published back then. They kept the pictures, and now they're putting them out there while they're talking about Trump, and Trump is calling them out on calling the corporate media out, saying, listen, all these individuals wrapped up in foil and things, these are from Obama's period of time back in 2014. And we can see right now there's a huge amount of double standards. This has to do with the law that's in place right now. And basically, this has been going on for a very long time. And Trump continually says that this law needs to be changed. And that's the whole point of all of this, where they're saying, oh, he's the only one doing this. This has been going on for quite a while. This is nothing new. We see that the Supreme Court upheld the Trump travel ban. And the Supreme Court handed the Trump administration its first major court victory over its travel ban after 3 successive versions of the ban were challenged by lower courts. In a 5-4 vote, the conservatives of the court backed the Trump administration, rejecting the notion that the ban discriminated against Muslims and refusing to question the administration's national security claims. The Supreme Court also rejected San Francisco's appeals court findings that Trump had exceeded his authority over immigration. And we need to understand is that when we look at these countries that Trump is banning, it's Venezuela, Libya, Yemen, Somalia, Syria, Iran, and North Korea. Now, North Korea, there's peace going on in that area right now, so most likely that ban will be lifted. Syria, eventually, Assad will take back his country. The forces will be out of that area, and I believe the ban will be lifted in that area. Libya, same thing. Yemen, we know that Somalia. These are all the places where the deep state has gone into these countries and had regime change and put into place their terrorist groups where they were trying to have regime change, where you see the Islamic State, Al-Qaeda. Remember, the paid mercenary army is within all of these countries, maintaining control of everything. And right now, Trump is playing along with the deep state, saying, listen, we should be afraid of these people, right? You've been telling us that terrorists are scary, that the Islamic State, Al-Qaeda, they're coming to get us. Well, we should protect ourselves. It's a national security problem. So we need to be protected from all these different areas. And of course, the deep state doesn't want this because they know, and we know, that there are no terrorists. These are the paid mercenary armies. They created them. This is why they're having a problem. And most likely that they want these individuals moved back and forth in and out of the United States in different areas. And Trump is putting a stop to this. We see that Spain is refusing docking of a migrant rescue ship. Spanish authorities said that they will not admit the Lifeline rescue boat with around 230 migrants on board to its ports. Spain cannot become the sea rescue organization for all of Europe. And we're seeing that this is beginning right now, where Spain, Italy, Poland, Czech Republic, now Austria, they're deploying border police after the asylum situation is getting critical right now. And they're saying, listen, we can't have all these migrants in here. Remember, this is part of the Soros plan, the deep state plan, to bring all these refugees, these illegal immigrants through Europe and blend everything together so they can have their one world government. But the countries right now are fighting back. So what does Macron do? And by the way, his rating in his country is continually declining. People are just becoming very, very fed up with him. He's saying that any EU country which refuses to accept migrants, they should be sanctioned. So right now, we have Macron calling for sanction on EU states that refuse migrants. The EU now is fighting with each other. I mean, this is just completely unbelievable. They're not together on this issue whatsoever. And we're going to see more and more of these countries say, you know something, we're closing the border. We've seen this before when Turkey released all those refugees out into Europe. There were many countries saying, listen, we do not want all these refugees coming to the country. Now, Germany and France, they're trying to convince the rest of the European nations that, no, this is a good thing. Have them come in here. Now, remember, Soros is footing the bill for all of this, bringing these refugees, not from the Middle East anymore, but from Africa and many other nations, to try to blend all of this together. And the EU nations now they're fighting back. North Korea is out there saying, listen, if Japan's Prime Minister Abe Shinzo wants to have a meeting, a summit like North Korea had with the United States, Japan needs to stop their military drills, just like the United States. Now, the United States stopped all drills in the Korean Peninsula. Kim Jong-un says, listen, I will meet with the Prime Minister of Japan if they stop military buildup and drills, which I think Japan is going to do because Japan doesn't want to be left out from all of this that's happening here. We see that the Taliban is rejecting the ceasefire extension by the Afghan elders, saying, listen, what is happening is that you just want us to abide by your ceasefire deal, which means we surrender. We need to have a bigger discussion if we're going to have a meaningful ceasefire. We need to be included in everything. And I think what's happening right now is the talks are going to begin where the Afghan government, which was controlled by the deep state, they're going to want to make concessions. Now, remember, the deep state only sees black and white. Everything else, they don't see. All the gray areas, they say either do it our way or that's it. Now, without the deep state involved, these countries, they can deal in the gray area and make deals with the countries, just like the United States made a deal with North Korea because there's the gray area. It wasn't either you give up nuclear weapons or we bomb you or we invade you. Let's talk about this. We'll give a little bit. You'll give a little bit. Let's come together on this. And that's how diplomacy works. But the deep state never wants this because they want what they want. They want regime change. They want to control the country. And we can see right now that those days are over. We see there's protests in Iran. Now, these protests look very, very similar to the protests that we saw back in 2012 and in the end of 2017, going into 2018. And this seems like it's being pushed by other forces, just like we've seen in other countries like Ukraine and many other, because once we see violence and we see a small group of people trying to stir things up, we know that things aren't going in the right direction and they're trying to be pushed in a certain direction. And we see right now that Q has told us that there was going to be a movement. I don't know if this is the movement because it doesn't look like this is a grassroots movement. And we'll have to watch this very carefully to see how this goes. But once again, the Iranian people, they work together. And we saw this back in 2018 in January, where the protesters, they all work together. They talk to each other. And once again, the protests aren't happening in every city in Iran. It's really in Tehran and mostly at the bazaar and maybe in a couple other places, but very, very tiny. And this might get bigger, but right now it's very small. And we'll have to see how this all plays out. We see that the Syrian army right now, they are pushing south to the second major town in the southwest of Syria. They are liberating many different towns. The elite Tiger forces, they managed to crack the lines of the paid mercenary rebels, and they pushed through Busra al-Harir, and they're continually moving south in Syria. Now, Israel reportedly fired missiles at the city of Damascus, and they're saying that the missiles hit an Iranian cargo plane. Syria is saying that the missiles hit, but there was no damage anywhere, and they're not reporting that it hit any type of plane or anything like that. So we see right now that there's the story out there. What really happened, we don't know as of yet, but there are no verified reports about the Iranian plane being targeted and being hit. They're saying, yes, missiles flew in, but they didn't do any damage anywhere else. We see that the Russian deputy foreign minister says that over 40% of the so-called southwestern de-escalation zone is controlled by terrorists. And if the de-escalation zones have this many terrorists in there, well, the Syrian forces, the Russian forces, they're justified in having military operations in this area. And I believe this is why the U.S. is distancing themselves from these paid mercenary forces, because I think what's going to happen here is Russia and Syria, they're going to be attacking these paid mercenary forces, and the U.S. is going to be stepping back, saying, okay, you're on your own. We have nothing to do with this. And I think this is the beginning steps of the U.S., where they're going to be moving themselves out of Syria right now. And I think eventually what's going to happen, there's going to be talks, and eventually after, I think, Trump meets Putin, we're going to see something happen in Syria where troops start to move out of this area. We see that from reports, the US, UK, they've been financing 54 groups in Syria right now. And this is not just the US, it's Israel, Britain, France, Jordan, the Persian Gulf states, and they've been supplying 54 militia groups in Syria. And we can see that this was all part of the deep state plan to go after Assad, but all this funding is coming to an end. It has come to an end, and these groups, they are floundering in Syria right now. We see that Ben Rhodes, who was the national security advisor to Obama, he was being interviewed by the Intercept reporter Mehdi Hassan, and this individual put a question to Ben Rhodes and said to Ben Rhodes, listen, were you, the administration of Obama, supporting the terrorist groups in Syria, the jihadists in Syria? And we need to remember, Rhodes has been described as being so trusted and close to Obama that he was in the room for almost every foreign policy decision of significance that Obama made during his 8 years in office. Now, in spite of Rhodes trying to dance around the issue and answer the questions, the reporter kept on asking the same question over and over. And basically, the reporter said, listen, oh, come on. You were coordinating a lot of their arms. And Rhodes said, yeah, we were. So there is proof once again that Obama was supporting, supplying the paid mercenary groups. And we know the coalition forces, they were supporting and paying for 54 different groups in there. We know that the deep state's been airlifting the Islamic State, their paid mercenary army, all over the place, into Afghanistan, into Libya, into Iraq, out of Syria. And here we have another confirmation that, yes, they were coordinating a lot of their arms. And we all know this. We've been telling everyone about this, how the deep state was using these forces to have regime change in all of these countries. So what we're seeing right now are more and more truths confirming everything that we have been talking about for the last couple of years. And once again, where the corporate media was saying that was fake news, and what they were pushing out there, that these are scary terrorists, that they just came out of nowhere, the U.S. is not supporting them, well, that was all fake, phony, and false. And here we see the alternative media once again was out there telling everyone that, no, this information is true. This is what has been happening. Now, we can see that more and more of these truths are going to be coming out. And as more and more people are pulled in, investigated, more and more of these indictments come out, we're going to see a lot more of these individuals start to point fingers at each other. And I think the lower level individuals are going to come out and say, yeah, this is what they were doing. and they're just going to put it out there. And we're starting to see a lot of this right now, and we're going to see a lot more of this. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.